Um, Gracias. Estoy muy feliz de estar aquí en TMX, ¿correcto? Muchas gracias a Santiago por la invitación y a Frida y Iván por cuidarme muy bien. Voy a leer algunas cosas en español, pero no voy a hablar en español porque no puedo. Ese es mi límite. Entonces, here we go. So hello, I'm Victoria. I'm going to be fine. I'm always really nervous for the first 3 minutes, and then I get over it. I'm Victoria. I make fonts, and that is what I'm here to talk to you about today. I find that really hard to do, though. I also find everyone has been such a great presenter here. No one had notes. I'm apparently like the only one that needs to look at something, or I forget how to use words. So I want to tell you about some of the fonts that I've made for people. Projects that I have found interesting or engaging to work on that not only started out as a font for a specific use, like we so often do, but as fonts for a specific use and a specific person. And yeah, so I'm gonna run through 3 main typefaces, and none of which are released for different reasons, which will become apparent. So here's the, it just has to go there. All right, perfect, or it's not. Okay. So here's a story of what led to me getting truly, really into type, and that eventually turned into 3 commercial font releases. So there's a lot packed into this first one, but so it's a font for Evan, kinda. I'm gonna start out not the way that I don't usually show my college work. So if you could do me a really big favor and not show people the pictures of my dumb drawings real quick. So I studied illustration, as said Frida. I don't have apparently a lot of examples of my work like that anymore, but the illustration department was really focused on both communication and form. So you were looking for, or at least the work that I like to do the most, that interested me the most, was work that both communicated something really clearly, really precisely, and a really specific thing, and looked really good, just hanging up on the wall. Neither of those are that. But that's really hard to do. It's one thing to make something that looks good, and it's one thing to make something that really clearly communicates something, but man, it's like weird magic to try to get those both. And at some point in that drawing and communication attempts, the words started creeping in, as maybe they did for some of you, I don't know. You just start drawing them. And it didn't look good, but there you go. And poetry and prose then started being what would come up a lot for me. I started getting, well, you can't see that, but it's okay. I started getting less and less interested in what the pictures around the words were saying, and the words kept being what was really driving me to do anything. This is 3 lines from A Little Love Poem by Andy Weaver. A quote from a novel. I found this one tiny bit of a quote on, I guess, Tumblr or something. And I don't know if I would still like the novel today if I read it again, but I just found this quote, and I had to read the whole book, and it was everything that I wanted right then. And so you make art about it. So here I was in my senior year of illustration at RISD, right? And I figured out that I wasn't really super big into illustrating. That was slowly fading away, but I was too stubborn to switch into a different department, and that would cost a lot of money, even more than we were already paying. And the people in the graphic design department, bless them, they made books and websites, which was good for them, but I didn't really want to make books and websites. I just wanted to draw the words. So I was trying to do my illustration work assignments for classes, and I was like shoehorning words into there, like ways that probably shouldn't have been, just because I just wanted to draw the letters. I remember talking to my boyfriend, Evan, or like, you know, sitting on his like tiny IKEA bed, it's like really close to the ground, and being like, I've never felt this way before about letters. And he already knew that I loved him. I told him a lot, all the time. So my next move was to wait until the last possible minute to email Cyrus Highsmith. Some of y'all know him, who taught the one graphic design class that was like kind of competitive for even graphic design majors to get into. But I sent him my sad little lettering and a typeface that I had started working on over the summer on a pirated copy of FontLab. And he was like, yeah, sure, okay, come in. And I was like, oh, shoot, cool. So as is Cyrus's way, he had us pick a document to make a typeface for that semester, and I picked the Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. Anyone read Sylvia Plath? I haven't read it cover to cover. I tended to like to get it and read like a couple pages before bed and just flip to a random place. I don't really recommend that you do that. It's like kind of sad for bedtime reading, but it's really pretty, and it's really like everything that just comes out of her hand, of her, not mouth, hand, is like the storm of meter and metaphor and color. And I've always been in awe of that. Like, even there's spelling mistakes, but it's still so beautiful. Like, you know that it's not polished. No one went over this. It just came out like that. Can you imagine like sitting down at like sitting down with your journal to like write, and you're like, how we need that security, how we need another soul to cling to, another body to keep us warm, to rest and trust, to give our soul in confidence. I need this. I need someone to pour myself into. Like, come on. It was great. So then, unexpectedly, but not really unexpectedly, my boyfriend broke up with me. This is one of those stories. So like, we had been dating for a while, but the thing was, the way that my brain works, the only kind of like crush that I ever have ever is like these huge, all-encompassing, like, I'm gonna like you for 5 years, and I can't tell anyone because then they'll know my secret. So I had gotten him to date me for a while, but then that ended. And I was really sad. I liked him so much that I like chose to ignore how for most of the time, like, he wasn't paying attention to me the way that I needed him to. I, you know, like, just didn't want to rock the boat because I wanted to be with him so badly. It always felt like he could choose to cast me off at any point, and then he did. So I was a stupid mess. I was crying a lot over, you know, like taking someone for granted, even though it didn't. I started running in the mornings to keep myself warm because it was getting colder, and that doesn't really work because like it only keeps you warm for so long during the day, and I really hate running. So I was sad. I was sad that I no longer had this thing that I'd wanted for so long, and I desperately wanted it back. So then, do you know, I came across this poem one night, probably on Tumblr, that was an excerpt from One Last Poem for Richard by Sandra Cisneros, and I found a translation of it online, so like bear with me. Se dice, bueno, no funcionamos, y todos los recuerdos, la verdad, no son buenos. Pero a veces hubo buenos momentos. El amor fue bueno. Me encantaba tu dormir torcido a mi lado y nunca soñé con miedo. Debería haber estrellas para grandes guerras como las nuestras. So like, you know, when you find something and you're like, that was for me. And so the poem found, like, I'm funny because it's a crutch, but like that poem really found me, and it really meant something at a time when I like really had to be told that it was like, okay, it was human to like grieve something that was not really great for me, but it was still okay to like love that memory and to want that back. So then, So what I did was, I took a week off from working on my actually good typeface, or going to be good typeface. This is what I'm talking about with the student work. This is okay, you can take a picture of it. I don't know what I was thinking when I made this, but I took a week and I was like, I must make a typeface specifically for this poem that I love, because I'm so sad. And I don't have much memory of what I did. I'm not Sylvia Plath. I didn't write down what I was feeling. I just made a typeface. And I remember going to Cyrus's class at the end of the week and being like, well, I didn't do the homework, but here's this. He didn't seem to mind. And it's not a great typeface, even on its own. It connects okay. It's got like weird heights of different stems. Why? Don't know. And this is an example from a PDF that I made then. I will not open the font again. And it didn't even work really well for the poem that I made it for, but people don't set poems in scripts for like really good reason. But what it did was it gave me a chance to work on something that was like really thrilling in a way that I had not experienced before in my time. And it was just a way to be productive when I needed it and feel good for a sec. And what it showed me was that I guess if I made a typeface about a breakup, maybe I should make more typefaces later. So okay, the typeface didn't work, and I let it go. I let the poem go, I let the typeface go. I didn't finish it. Instead, I kept working on my Sylvia, the thing that was just mine, only mine. And the class assignment for the semester was one typeface, so like not to brag, but I made a Roman and an italic, and kerned them both. My other classes suffered, it was great. So then, after the semester was over, y'all remember Diana? Think back. Cyrus handed me off to the pointed guidance of Diana Weissman, who very, very generously took a lot of time to give me a lot of feedback and build the 2 styles of the typeface out to be actually good, and also 4 styles instead of 2. So those, and then in 2014, Font Bureau hired me full time. Thanks, Diana. The Sylvia typeface was what became Marcia, my first commercial release. It also doesn't work great for text, but I rolled with it this time and actually finished it. Then, shoot, didn't load that font. That's okay. Only look at the right side. Embry Text is a text face in 12 styles, which was I need to make a text face now because the first one didn't work. So it's got really high X heights and it's really sturdy and it's really great like that. And then Gotro was swinging back in the other direction and getting really swirly and scripty. So, hey, I've joked to some of my coworkers about the getting dumped, making a typeface out of my feelings thing, but like obviously I don't, credit Evan dumping me for getting into type design. That would have happened some other way. The seeds were planted, the ship was starting to sail, but that just so happens to be how it worked out in this lifetime, and that's the story that I can tell you now. And so that's how this whole thing started. That's the past, now on to the future. Font for Cecily. So you guys know it's boring. Sans serifs are boring. Diana said this too, so I feel validated. She's like, I don't usually like sans serifs. I'm like, yeah. There's just like, I'm like a little bit joking, but there's also like so little to work with there compared to like what you can do with other typefaces. And I've been like, trying to build out my library into something that where theoretically, if someone wanted to, one day they could use only typefaces from my library. So, you've got different classifications of things. So for like a lot of the time last year, I was like just trying to think. I was like, okay, I've got a display serif. I've got a text serif. I've got a swirly thing. I need to do a sans next. And nothing was really calling to me. Let me tell you what didn't work for coming up with ideas was any of these things. I tried to translate it. I did my best. Yeah, especially the last one. He was like, what? He's very nice. He's great. So enter to this scene my little sister. Her name is Cecily. This isn't Photoshop. Like this, she gives us a mug for Christmas every year. That's like she's playing a really long game, and I don't really know where it's going. But she lives in Los Angeles. She's a textile designer. The last time that I saw her was earlier this year. We were going to a friend's wedding, and we were sharing a hotel room. And the first morning, I wake up, and I'm like really jet lagged. You know, I'm like not really there, and I hear giggling, and I look over, and she's not in the other bed. And so I get up. I walk to the bathroom, and she is laying down, fully clothed, in the bathtub, empty bathtub, drinking a cup of tea and looking at memes on her phone. So that's Cecily. I don't know if this is gonna work really well. It might be like super laggy, but she put this in the family group chat the other day. I just need you to watch this for me. So she's gonna be super mad at me for not mad, but she, whatever. So she's also really good at Instagram. Particularly lately, she's been dabbling in the mediums of cake and footwear. This cookie heels. I don't know. Do yourself a favor and follow her. So for actual work, she knits clothes for New York fashion design labels. So all of the clothes here that are knitted as opposed to woven and sewn together, she did them on her knitting machine. That's what she does. It's like fashion. She also does designs patterns for fabric. It's not even things like Spoonflower that everyone can order. It's only fashion designers can have access to this particular repository of original designs that they can then license from people like her. And as a fiber expert, she always really patiently answers my questions about laundry. So that's my sister. I have to tell you about my sister first before I tell you about this. So as is true for a lot of my friends, I made her a logotype a few years ago. I can't really remember, just for her website and her personal brand and stuff. I can't remember why I decided that this was the lettering that she needed, but I just made her write her name out a bunch of times. Will it go? Yeah. And this is super fun for me to do, is to make it's not lettered, it's just you go straight to the correcting and fixing and composing and putting a logo together from someone's dumb handwriting, and it's super fun for me to do. So made her a logo, then it's gonna take a sec. She added the color, which look away for after a sec, but I think it's really, really brilliant. So around this time last year, she was updating her website with new work and stuff like you do, and she sent it to me to look at, like you also do. And she was using whatever one of the default fonts was. It was probably Helvetica, I can't remember, on the platform where she made her website. And I was like, this is great, the website looks good, but dude, can I make you a font? And she was like, do you have nothing better to do? And I was like, no, I do not. And so she was like, sure. And I asked, is there any particular direction that you would like to give me? So this is what I got. And you know what? It's not a lot, but it worked. No, spoilers. I'm gonna tell you now. This has never happened before. Oh, whatever, that's cool. This has never happened before, and I don't expect it to happen again, but as soon as I started thinking about this, I got a really clear idea in my head of what I wanted to make for her, which you just saw. And it was gonna be this sturdy and wacky looking thing that was a little bit heavy with some weird default characters and balls. And like, that was a weird experience. I felt like Tobias Farrow Jones, where I like just wake up in the morning and like, I'm going to do Interstate now. Or I should stop mentioning him. But like for me and lots of other people, the rest of us, you know, something has to go through iteration upon iteration before it gets to something that looks like interesting or worth pursuing. But this was like, I knew what it was supposed to be. So there it is. Oh no, never mind. It was going to be interesting and weird and understatedly funny, like Cecily, like her work. So first thing you notice, the balls. Come on. It's gonna, there it goes. So that's weird for a sans, right? But like you can just do that. You can just put balls on a sans serif. They don't like come to your house and take you away. It used to be even more ball-like. Like right now they've got, you know, it's rounded on the insides of the characters. They used to be like strictly balls. So, but now it's a little bit softer than that, and technically teardrop shaped. But hey, and then so that set the tone for like weird stuff. Once you put ball terminals on your sans serif, you can't like have an X that just, you know, it has terminals that are on the X height and on the baseline lining up with that. That looks too normal. You gotta have some diagonal terminals on your diagonal characters. It looks like, I think that it looks a little bit less, typographic, a little bit more like something you would have written with a pen, I think. A little bit more casual. And then those weird default characters that I talked about. The J, you can see where I got that from the F. I'm not sure if it's gonna stay. The J is kind of on the fence. The Y and the G, though, are definitely staying as the defaults. I might make like less weird alternates, but has anyone ever seen a G like that? Did I like, I don't wanna like take credit for making that up because maybe I like osmosised it from somewhere, but I don't know. I don't know what else is like that. So as Diana said, whenever we start doing something, once we start drawing something in a medium weight, I've internalized this advice from David Berlow, who whenever I would show him something in the middle, he'd be like, okay, but where does it break at the lightest and where does it break at the heaviest? Because that's how you figure out like what has to happen in between and make a lot of decisions there. So didn't have to ask him this time, and I just did it. And so you'll notice the italics have some italic forms as opposed to just being sloped. You've got your script DK and your script W and V and Z because that means you can put more balls on them. What's next? And then I thought that's all well and good. Italic forms where the italics are supposed to be, but I thought why don't I like put a set of alternates in the Romans that are the italic forms? So okay, there's a lot of information here, but it's all the first lines of the sections where they've got, you know, the italic form that is in the upright posture. And I see this, yeah, those. So like the top Z, and I'm not going to go through it. So I see this like potentially being used as something stupid looking like this. That's super fun, like the same letter next to each other. I don't know if someone wants to get like super weird. So I have that for, as you can see, all of the characters that would have changed forms in the italics. So you know the V, the W, the X, the Z, the A, the G. All the ones like that. Okay, and who would I be if I didn't try to put swash caps into something that like resisted swash capifying, like a sans serif? It's kind of a balancing act to be in between. The bottom one is like really rough, don't look at that. It's kind of a balancing act to be in between the letters that are like super, super scripty, no trace of the original alphabet, and the ones where like you can see where the original alphabet came from. So I'm still trying to like feel that out and see what works. But I have it in all the styles, should someone need that. And so it's happening, it's on her website. It has been on her website for a while, like a year, but I've only just been like, adding more and more styles. And I feel like the lightweight isn't like so, it's a little bit more elegant. It's not so, like clunky and like, here I am. So maybe I'll persuade her to change it back, but we'll see. And I'm also making her use it on her CV, which is here if you need a textile expert. That'll make up for me showing you her Instagram. So I don't think that it's like, obviously it's a pretty specific design, but I don't think that it's so weird that it wouldn't work for anything except for my sister's weird art. I've been using it for like some more understated things. Like I've got my, like if you set things in all caps, it's a little bit more normal looking, just a ball here and there. But I can't wait to see what this being used in like weird and not weird things alike. Okay, and the third font of 3. So in early 2013, you guys, I bought a font on losttype.com. If any of you know that, it's the pay what you want Foundry website. A guy had just released a typeface that I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And so I bought it. I gave him $10. And he sent me a thank you note. Do I have that there? Yeah. And then in August of that year, I had graduated, was on my own, was living in New York, making very little money, and I got an email. Did I already say August? Yeah, August. This is Day, who made the font, emailed me some proofs of a typeface that he was working on, and I was like, we know who we are, but like, did you mean this? Did he mean to send this to me? So I was like, did you mean to send this to me? And he was like, yes. So we emailed some. We've been dating since then. So we both make fonts and lettering. And Day's approach to lettering has always been like pretty informed by the tools that would make it. He likes to be able to understand and classify like where anything came from and be able to work in that way, like not mixing up the styles too much, like if it's not relevant to do so. And he, unlike me, has a pretty good command of like a calligraphy nib, a brush pen, things like that, like actually using your hand to do. So that one and that one are his, and the poodle pie is mine, where it's just like Sharpie. So yeah, I've like to say I have always had a little bit more of a free-spirited approach. But so he's always, given me feedback that has proved very helpful and in ways that I wouldn't have like known to improve at all. But we hadn't collaborated on a project together in 5 years. It's hard enough to come up with something that like just one person wants to do. How do you like agree on something that 2 people like you both want it? So then enter. There's always an enter moment for these. Last year we found a historical source that we were both interested in pursuing. We were like, do you want to do it? Do you want it? Like, so I have this book on Oz Cooper that I borrowed from Cyrus and then didn't give it back, and then I moved away. And there's a calligraphed dedication at the beginning of the book. It's 3 pages that look like this. This is just half of one of the pages, by a designer, I guess, named Raymond DeBall. And it's like just, the part saying like, this is a book about Oz Cooper and he's great and here's about him. And it's lively and it's evenly structured and it looks natural. It looks like, looking at this makes me think like, oh, I could pick up a pen and do that. Like it looks casual. I can't pick up a pen and do that, but it makes me think that I can, which is kind of cool. So we were like, maybe let's try to digitize this. I remember being skeptical that we wouldn't be able to like capture the bounciness of it in a typeface. So often when you try to like do that, you have to make alternate glyphs, or when you take something that's charmingly written out on paper and you take away like the texture and the irregularities, then it becomes like really sterile and just it takes away all of its cute charm. So we didn't want to like take away its original, like what made it good, but we also didn't want to like make it too gimmicky with like paper texture. Who knows how that's going to work? So you know, we like grabbed some high-res scans, and that okay. And then we both, you know, visually scanned and went through the page trying to find like the best example of each thing that we could. The most universal examples of all of them. And then either we're getting like kind of good at our jobs, or these letters like really lent themselves to being digitized. So we passed the file back and forth like you do, doing, you know, each drawing new letters and going over what the other one had done. And this didn't take that long, surprisingly. We came to something where the baselines were just bouncy enough, and the caps were just swashy enough, and there's like just enough curves on the insides to refer to ink pooling that obviously it didn't look like the sample, but there was something believable and really still so spirited about it. So I think we were just like working on instinct, so now I'm trying to rationalize what we did. But I think that part of what makes this work is we really quickly and somewhat instinctively arrived at this system where all of the strokes that could conceivably been drawn without lifting the pen had curves on the insides of where all those strokes were. So the H goes, you know, 1, 2, 3, and you could do that without picking the pen up. Same thing with the N, down, up. And then anywhere where it would be a stroke that you would pick the pen up and do another one, we gave it sharp corners there. Where like ink probably still also would have pooled there, but we felt like it needed to have some sharp angles to be able to like not get too blobby, not get too amorphous and cartoony. And then there's like, there's always going to be exceptions. But for the most part, like, see, that doesn't follow the pattern, but for the most part, it almost all follows the pattern. And as always, we were worried about the uncanny valley thing. This is like what Diana was talking about with when you have two of the same letter next to each other. We call it the uncanny valley because if you don't know that term, it's when someone makes a robot meant to look like a human face, and they make it look really like a human face. People have like an instinct to recoil from that. We're like frightened by it a little bit because it's like almost too real, but not real. So you see that in script lettering, not script lettering, in typefaces that are meant to look like script lettering or meant to look like calligraphy, where it's looking good, but then you see two of the letters next to each other and they're exactly the same, and you're like, gotcha. But we didn't really have that problem too much with this. It helps to set it small, I think, to intend to set it small. But I think also part of what did that was to have a variety of same or not and in between. So you have your forms like the A and the D and the G. Those are the same contours on the bowls of all those characters where you would expect them to be. You would expect those to be the same. You have the left side of the M and the right side of the M and the N, where you might expect those to be exactly the same, and they are, but not quite. And then you have letters like the V, the W, and the Y that you would expect to be the same, but they are not at all. The V and the W are like a little bit different, and the Y is doing its own thing. So just enough variation, I think, gives it that it makes it be able to be set in a body of text and not like have things stand out too hard. So it's not a complete character set, and it doesn't need alternates or ligatures to work, I think, for the most part. It's got 3, the FF, the FI, and the GG. which are arriving soon. Or not. But, so it doesn't matter. But we did also, I'm going to click this already and see how long it takes. Dang it. We did also find some alternates at the ends of lines. I like to make alternates when I don't have to, but just when I want to. So we grabbed those and started making some. So the first kind is the E with the big bowl that goes down like that. You can put that at the end of the word. Then you have your weird German-style D. That, for some reason, came up at the end of the lines like a lot. You've got your ends of the straight characters, the like little shoe thing, like Peter Pan. Does that make sense? And then lastly, a really subtle one, a T with a little bit longer of a crossbar. Just something a little extra on the end of the line. So we got married last year in March, and we just went to the courthouse with our parents and our sisters and our grandmothers, and then we went and had, since we didn't have a wedding, we roped who would be our best friends, our bridal party, into helping us throw a party several months later for 70 people. So we rented a house in the middle of nowhere, Maryland, and got all our friends to stay there, and then threw a party at this house. It was great. We cooked all the food ourselves. We didn't have anyone serving drinks. It was just like a bucket of ice with beer and wine. And by the way, I totally recommend doing this. It was super fun. But, so of course we use the Font for Everything party related. Here are the invitations that I designed, and yet designed is a big word for I put text black on white centered. The typeface does all the heavy lifting here. Here's some of all the food we made, and the little tags for it. I only have pictures of the foods that failed. The carrot cake had an accident, and we forgot to put the egg and pepper salad out, but those were the only problems. We used them for our cards for our friends, for the little gifts that we gave them, for helping us. They worked a lot. Yeah, we have two friends named Andy. We made a website is a big word for what I did, but made a website. I think it works pretty okay. I think that I tried it on my phone a lot. I was yeah, I can still read that. Of course, we had to do the thank you cards using it, which, yeah. It was a really low budget party in general. We paid for everything ourselves, but I think that it has to be the lowest budget wedding that ever had a custom typeface designed for it. If you know of another wedding that has a custom typeface design, at all, for any price, I want to know about that. So we're still working on this. Wish us luck. So I've shown you one. I started off with one bad font, and then after that, I showed you, I think, all of my best and interesting typographic work so far. And I will be honest with you, the typefaces that I've released so far haven't gotten a lot of commercial use. There's just so far, no. There's a lot of stuff out there, which is great. But it just means that you're being hey, look at me, my font is good, but everyone else is doing that also. And what that means for me is that most of the uses of my typefaces have been by my friends and family, and people that I've met at parties. So my mom has a food blog. It's a shrine to Embry text. It's 4 styles. It's got these are the images that you make so that people can post them on Pinterest. She uses all of my typefaces for that, and some of Days. This is a website that for a platform for people to find inclusive yoga practices in their city or town. These are some merchandise that my friend Kara helped made for standupamerica.com that, an organization focused on fighting the current US government's legislative agenda, as you do. I sent Marcia to some ladies in Brazil, led by Luisa Laje, for an exhibition and a book that they were putting together for Design by Women. Happy to give my fonts for that. My friend Robin Canner uses my typefaces for like, I send her everything. And she tends to use them in tiny places, which is great, where I'm so happy for them to be. I love being small and just helping a little bit. Last one, Robin also got a tattoo last year of a quote from a book that we both read last year by Hanya Yanagihara called A Little Life. I like sad things. So we both adored this book and cried over it, and then she got a tattoo of like a tiny part of a quote from that book. I find people like me. I don't have any tattoos, but if I did, maybe they would be from poems or books, as you can imagine. So where does this use or lack of use leave me? So when I'm feeling disillusioned about where I am and who's using my typefaces or not using my typefaces, I come back to a quote that Myra Coleman said when she gave a commencement keynote at my graduation. And so if you don't know, Myra Coleman is an author, illustrator, artist. And so I translated this quote, so it's not perfect, but I just wanted to give you this as a parting gift. So she said to us, ¿Con qué avanzamos? Solo podría haber dos cosas, trabajo y amor. Y no estoy seguro de que alguien sepa qué es el amor, o cómo cambia, o cómo el amor se cambia a usted. Lo dejaremos de lado un minuto, es un poquito complicado, y pensamos en el trabajo. No siempre es fácil trabajar, se necesita mucho coraje. Y a veces tienes que forzarte, o si no, encontrar a alguien más para forzarte para crear. Y si la persona que te fuerza es también la persona quien te ama, tienes mucha suerte. And then she went on to talk about like how lucky she had been and how she met her husband and had like this cataclysmic romance apart and together, and then they started a family, and then they fell in love with work. And I was, sitting in the audience, like being in my graduation robe and being afraid of my life, and I was like, that sounds so great and so romantic, and like it still does, but I don't take it so literally anymore. I think of what she said as like less of forcing anyone to do anything, and more of trying to seek out and be around people that make me, within myself, force myself to be good, force myself to be better. And that hopefully they feel the same way around me. It's really hard to think of typefaces that can be used universally. That's not no one can like really predict how they're going to do that exactly. It's hard to promote your typefaces to get people to use them. And so often, like, I make them and I just put them in my tiny little corner of the world, at least to start. For me, the start is people. Like the start is always people. Maybe the use of that one typeface is to appeal to someone that I love, to like help out just a tiny bit. And if someone else wants to use that later, then that's great. But if I can do something with or for or thinking about someone that I care about, then like right out of the gate, I think that typeface is like obviously going to do a tremendous job, at least for me. And I am so glad that I made it. And I have also been very lucky. Thank you.